It's time to talk The Ultimates. That's right, folks. Marvel last year started to dust off an old imprint they had from about 20 years ago at this point, called The Ultimate Universe. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It was a gateway for a lot of young people at the time to get into Marvel Comics. It's new, it's fresh, it's revitalized. But what if, 20 years later, they said, let's bring it back. Nostalgia, it runs rampant and whatever. Except it's not the same Ultimate Universe. It has a different designation in the multiverse, and it's a little more complicated. The maker, who's a Reed Richards from the old one, he's like, I'm going to build a new world, and it's going to be pretty cool, and I'm going to roll in and take shit over at some point. It's going to be really fun, and it's going to look awesome, and things are going to be different and weird, and I'm going to make sure there's no heroes in it, but maybe heroes are going to retaliate and fight back somehow. And then, what if it's like an entire analog for a midlife crisis for Peter Parker? Look, it's exciting. I liked the Ultimate Universe when it first came out. I was a kid. I read some of it. I like what we're doing now here, and this is going to be a non-spoiler review for the Ultimates book. It is not the only comic book currently being published in the Ultimate Universe at Marvel, so we'll briefly talk about those for a second here. Ultimate Spider-Man, fantastic book. Probably better than the mainline Spider-Man book going on right now. It is the thing people want to see from Peter Parker. He's mature, the characters are mature, people act the way they should. It's really good. Black Panther has turned Moon Knight into a villain. Ultimate Black Panther is like the story of Wakanda as a battleground against Khonshu. Insanely fun, really different book than what you're expecting. Ultimate X-Men takes into an entirely different direction with Peach Momoko doing some incredible stuff over there. Very unique book. But if you know me and you know this channel, you know I'm a big fan of the Avengers. And the Avengers in the Ultimate Universe were called the Ultimates because, sure, why not? So this book got relaunched. Currently, 6 issues are out. It is kind of the point where, like, the first part of the story is over. This would be a good trade if the trade is going to come out at this point. But 6 issues are out. And it's time we talk about it. Because, man, is this interesting. To me, this is what I want the Avengers to be. Like, I have been reading a lot of the ongoing Avengers book right now. That's just in the main continuity. It's fine. It just doesn't have the same appeal as this, which is just serialized stories that are intimate and impactful and have something to say about the state of the world. It's really impressive and cool. This is from Dennis Camp, who is a name I'm not too familiar with, and there's like a bunch of guest artists appearing on each and every other book, so you get like a sense of like the tone, but we get an artist that perfectly depicts what this issue is about, and that makes it really fun. And Dennis here, his main thing he's trying to do is like, this is not the Marvel Universe you know. We are going to go to different aspects, different facets, talk about how these characters have existed in the main continuity, but how we would change that, modernize it up for like how things are today in a very politically charged world. Surprise, surprise, this is a very politically charged comic book, and that might be scary to some people, but that's just the truth. This is about a world without an America. America was like disassembled essentially like years earlier, decades earlier. And when you have Captain America being unfrozen in this reality, how does a man who symbolizes a thing that doesn't exist anymore feel about like his country's namesake no longer existing? It's a very interesting angle to play with that character, and this book is just full of fun angles. Non-spoiler stuff, we are going to talk about some of the characters and some of their motivations. Like, for instance, we have Iron Lad in this book, Anthony Stark. He is a young guy who is like a hero of this world who's like, I have the ability to show other characters from the main Marvel Universe that they can be heroes here too. So I'm going to go on a journey with my Ultimates, and we're going to figure that out. His Ultimates include Sith and Thor, two Asgardians in a different kind of level right now. I would say they're not like our main focused characters, but they are very interesting and use some cool stuff with them. Always great to see like this kind of take on these characters. Like Thor's like a prisoner or something. We'll get into it in some other aspects. We, of course, have Captain America come back, and he's just great. He gets an entire issue dedicated to himself, which is what this is too. A lot of these characters are given separate issues to like understand themselves and figure out, so he gets like a crash course in the history of this place and how that affects like the current state of what America would be. It's very fantastic. And Doctor Doom, who is in this reality, not a spoiler, Reed Richards, and this Doom gets his own origin, his own story, which might be one of the most interesting like comic books to come out this year from Marvel. It looks gorgeous. It is so well handled. It's such a unique take on Doom that actually gets you like, oh man, this is like a really broken story for both Reed and Doom as a character. Very beautiful. And as the story progresses, we are introduced to a lot more other members of what there's going to be, like the Human Torch, the android. America Chavez is like a great addition where she represents like something that is lost. I really like that. The first issue is kind of all about Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, two characters that are just so integral to the Avengers to me. Like they are my... I think you need a Wasp on the Avengers. I've always said that. She's an integral part of that team. And I really like that this Hank Pym's like, I don't know if I want to do this because I don't like what I was in the main universe. It's a really interesting concept because this is a fully aware and fully realized reality. Yes, we're introducing characters left and right, and, you know, in Spider-Man, we're introducing, like, the Sinister Six or Black Cat over here, and in Black Panther, we have, like, the Moon Knights, and we have, like, the Sorcerer Supreme showing up, and we got, like, Guardians and Luke Cage coming into, like, this Ultimates run. But everything feels realistic. Hank Pym is a reluctant hero. He's going to become a reluctant hero in this capacity. Hulks become, like, saviors of an island where there's gamma testing. The use of gamma and gamma story stuff in this entire arc, these first 6 issues, it is kind of like just slowly teasing itself throughout everything. When we finally get to like that reveal, ooh, does it work? It works really well. It's a really cool idea, giving us a different kind of She-Hulk that feels very contemporary and modern for everything we're doing, which I really like. You know, we have our classic heroes. We have our classic heroes, the Wasp and Ant-Man / Giant Man, Captain America. But when you get like the younger side and you can like do different types of stories like that, we're seeing that really well. She-Hulk is a great example of that. The new Hawkeye is a great example of that. That might be my favorite issue of all of these 6, because that's what I want to see from Hawkeye. A Hawkeye should be in nature rebellious and go against authority and kind of just be on the outskirts of everything being said. And that is what this new Hawkeye does. They represent something so different for that character. I really appreciate it. And it all kind of culminates into like the big fight. Every single issue is standalone. It is talking about one character. They are less of a team and more like a division or like just, you know, a faction where different people can branch off and do a thing. Not every character is appearing in every issue. But it gets like this final end of like this big arc, which you could say is kind of centered around like the big bad currently they have to fight. And we get like the big payoff issue. And it looks cool. And it's such a fun, neat concept that takes things I like, that if you're going to do something in this world with these characters, change it up enough where it's really interesting to look at. Using names that we're familiar with, it works when you handle them with this care. This is not the same Ultimate Universe we were familiar with. It doesn't feel like there's like a marching order for this division either. When we first did the first Ultimates book, with Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimates, Ultimate X-Men back in the day, there was clearly like, we have to talk about stuff, and like we want things to feel realistic and modern, so characters are just gonna like do whatever, and then Bendis is just gonna throw whatever he wants at the wall. This seems more like, we have the baseline, here's a map of what the world looks like, here's what Tony Stark is trying to accomplish in the 18 months he has before we see the Maker return. And that gives you something really original and cool. It is a fully realized idea that is still willing to explore and try new things. And there's something very broken and sad about like the way a lot of this exists, where it's a broken world that doesn't feel whole. I've said this before too. I think like the Ultimate Spider-Man book is like, you know, the kids that grew up reading Ultimate Spider-Man growing up and realizing maybe I wasted my life. And in some ways this book feels like adjacent to that for like what the original Ultimates was, which was a Bush era, you know, militaristic Avengers, realistic, look how powerful and dangerous we could be. We are a military unit that can destroy stuff, and we are angry and hate each other. This feels like the era of kids that grew up reading that, talking about, you know, how bad the world is because of the powers that be, destroying the things that we hold sacred and dear, and we can never actually win against the corruption that controls everything. There's so much of that, just corruption in politics and nuclear testing and the way we see the world and the way we see ourselves and the way we're just manipulated by events beyond our control. It's the same thing we're seeing with Absolute DC right now. I said this too, I think every single book of like the Absolute Trinity is about the underdog being born into a bad situation, fighting and rebelling against the nature that brought them up. That is a lot of what this Ultimate Universe feels like too, and the Ultimates is a perfect example of that. We are seeing people fighting against what they're supposed to be, and it's a great new take on a lot of these classic heroes that is really cool. This book is really interesting. I am never bored with it. He goes into so many interesting and creative directions. It's fun to see this happening. I think the Ultimate Universe is really working in different ways, and Ultimates is a prime example of that. These books are all interesting to read. I highly recommend checking them out. And it's a good time just to be a Marvel and DC fan, because they're taking big swings like this. You know, taking what you know as an established character and changing it up. And if you like the Avengers as much as I do, the Ultimates is kind of the best Avengers book going right now. So, the Ultimates, I am going to give an 8 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.